Hi, this is Nathan. Welcome to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. Hello and welcome to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. I'm Dylan Weaver.
And I'm Andrew Sabo.
And we're here this week to talk about a matter of manners.
That we are, Dylan.
It's episode 446A of Adventures in Odyssey, off of the Your Wildest Dreams album, written by John Fornoff, directed by, wait for it, Phil Lawler.
Wow. I can't believe that Phil let this go. This seems too liberal for him.
And it originally aired May 13th of 2000.
Wow. Interesting. This is a doozy of a split episode. I'll tell you what. This is going to be high in the rankings. I wouldn't be surprised if this ended up in my number 2 spot. That's all I'm going to say now.
Wow. Do you guys remember last week, or no, maybe 2 weeks ago when we put out an episode and
Andrew said it was going to be really
good?
No,
and I was really into it and Andrew wasn't.
Oh, and then by the end of it I came around?
A little bit. We have a chance at the opposite this week because boy was this one of my least favorite episodes.
Interesting.
Episode summer.
Huh. Well, that's why we do this.
Yeah.
So fun.
Yeah, I know.
Basically
I like that we have
research.
I like that we have different opinions, and I'm interested to see how those come out throughout the duration of this episode. Because, yeah, I didn't have the best of time, Chalk Squad.
Are you okay, Dylan? Is this something you'd like to talk about now before we get into the episode?
No, this episode didn't hurt me.
Okay.
I fail to see
the point?
it didn't do much for me.
Fair enough.
It was neither comedic enough nor a good enough story.
Okay. All right.
But that's the beauty here is that Andrew and I can disagree and still be friends. That's kind of the premise of our show.
Precisely.
So let's get
into it.
Let's talk about something we don't agree about.
Labor laws. Children should work. I'm glad that's on the record. So this episode kicks off with David and Alex. So David Strasberg, Alex Jefferson. In Wits End. Classic duo. Great duo. Glad to see them together again, honestly. That's probably why I like this episode so much.
Sure. They're fun.
David is trying to stuff 3 scoops of ice cream in his mouth all at once, and Alex is narrating like a ringleader in his pretty funny bit.
Yeah.
Everybody is kind of gawking. It doesn't really sound... It sounds like there's mixed feelings.
Sure.
And then Mandy states she's disgusted.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little bit of like, the boys being like, whoa, like he's actually going to do it. And the girls being like, no, this is gross. Like, and me also being like, this is gross and also not impressive.
Yeah, ice cream's a liquid. Like, well, it turns into a liquid in your mouth.
Sure,
that's what I meant to say. It liquefies. Ice cream is a liquid.
This is so. This is a big debate between myself and some of my friends.
Interesting.
In which I am hard. Ice cream is a solid.
No, ice cream is a solid.
Yeah. Okay.
It just turns into a liquid,
but yes,
when it's no longer ice cream.
Right. The shoving it in your mouth is like...
it's a liquefying process.
Right. Like, that's not... Like, I don't know.
Chubby Bunny is an excellent example
of there's
something...
so many other things of, like, how much can you fit in your mouth, and ice cream just doesn't feel like it's a compelling version of that at all.
No. Unless it's like a give yourself brain freeze race, which... Like, if they had prefaced it by saying, I'm going to put 3 scoops of ice cream in my mouth without getting brain freeze, then I would have been interested.
Sure.
I would have put down my rag if I was Wit and wanted to see what was going on.
But yeah, then right, Mandy's offended by her brother, and this leads to Wit showing up and doing the repeating a bite of applesauce, but instead of like the fact that they like burned down Wit's End or whatever happened in that episode, they just ate a lot of ice cream and it was gross. And Wit's like, effective immediately, you're banished from Wit's End for a week.
Yeah, what? So he mentions, like, this is something I've talked to you about before.
Sure, it's
briefly.
an ongoing issue
Sure.
that they make a mess.
But the answer is, you're not allowed to come here anymore.
Right.
And then in a week they can come back and get, like, pass a manners test, basically, to be allowed back into Wit's End.
Yeah.
And he yells, "Goodbye, gentlemen," on their way out, which is kind of funny.
Sure. And because of the weird compression of time, it does feel like that they are not out of there for a week. I think they literally come back the next day.
It does feel like the next day.
Negotiate to come back in because they found a random self-help book that is supposed to teach them better manners.
It's Manners for the Socially Challenged, which isn't too far from what I do at work. It's surprisingly close.
It's also the name of my forthcoming autobiography.
Hey, man. Chalk Spot, I hope you appreciate that level of wit. Ooh. I do. So they find this book, Manners for the Socially Challenged, which... Is that a joke? Is that like a rip on Manners for Dummies or something like that? Is that what it's supposed to be?
Right. It seems like it seems like it's being framed up as frivolous self-help book because, it's 2000.
It's not the Bible.
And the only thing that you can buy to help yourself is the Bible and whatever they're selling at your local Christian bookstore.
Amen. Especially the calendars. Those are really good for your faith journey. So, yeah, they read this book, and then they go back to Wit's End to take this test, presumably. I don't really know, because Wit does give them a test later, and they fail it.
Right.
But they're kind of like stumbling over their words, just kind of saying the manner words out of context.
Sure, right. Thank you, please. And then, they just... I don't know. It's enough of a show that it's like, yeah, sure, you've learned your lesson. Come on in.
Well, I mean, they say please and thank you and stuff, and it doesn't come across perfect. That's fine.
Yeah, right. I
don't know that kicking them out was worth what they got out of that situation.
That's what I was gonna say. Is like I can't quite wrap my head around how, like, Wit banishing them from Wit's End solved a problem, or exactly what the problem was. Like, these kids are... Because, like, they could have gone, like, rude as in mean, but they went rude as in gross.
Yeah.
And, like...
Or rude as in inconsiderate or something like that. Yeah. Which, I mean, maybe a little bit. There's other people eating here, I guess, but... They are also elementary to middle school boys.
Right, it's not like I want to defend their position, because, like, yeah, there should be consequences for being gross or whatever in public, and, like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like... Here's the thing. This doesn't feel like a manner in which Wit has ever taught a lesson, and
exactly.
I think that's why it stands out, is because Wit would typically be like... I'm going to send you in the room of consequences where you see what it's like if no one in the world had manners. Or I'm going to send you back to, some biblical event that showcases how having good manners saved someone's life. Yeah. Or I'm going to, I'm going to give you a specific assignment that will,
teach you manners or force you to have good manners.
Teach your manners. Or I'm going to, hire a bunch of people to be rude to you the way you're rude to them. All of that feels within the realm of, the way Wit handles things. And this, bizarre, hands-off, just, abstract, go fix yourself and then you can come back to me, just doesn't
It doesn't track.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like wit, and
No,
which is
at all.
it's a weird criticism to have, I realize.
No,
But
I don't know necessarily, though, because I feel like the show historically has been very careful about, the kind of punishments that wit gives for consequences and things like that. And like when Connie and Eugene were, essentially fired from Wit's End or suspended at the very least.
no, they were fired.
Yeah, like they, like those were real circumstances with serious problems that created those consequences. And this is, I should have had a conversation with your parents saying, hey, I've been noticing these kids have been having poor manners. Is that something you could talk with them about?
Sure. Yeah, it just feels like
banishing them from Wit's End so they can read a book and come back.
Right, but like
is just creating the problem.
And it's also not a book Wit assigned. It seems like they just found it on the street. They walked out of Wit's End and they looked down and there was a copy of Manners for Dummies and they were like, "Great, we're dummies."
Yep.
And we just got yelled at about our manners, so let's go read this. It's also right. It's also like it's not Wit saying like go read this passage of scripture.
No.
Like it's like
completely extra biblical.
Right. And I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like I'm not fundamentally mad about the strategy. It just seems weird given everything else we know about this world that this is the route that we took.
Exactly. Well, and especially to get where we're going, which is Alex and David passing their manners test and then going to the principal at school and being like, everybody here has terrible manners. You should put us in charge of, instituting manners in this elementary school.
Right. They're like, we'll just give badges to all the people who show good manners. And he's like, oh, great. That sounds fantastic. You kids go do that. I'm not going to provide any accountability or monitoring on this situation. Because I'm just the principal. Voiced by Tom.
Amen.
And then they go around and they're deducting, like they create this point system where seemingly everyone starts at 0.
Yep.
And you either get points by showing good manners or you lose points by showing bad manners, and you don't get the badge until you've hit 100 points.
Yeah, that is insane. That seems like a bit of a lofty goal, considering we're only giving out 2 points per thank you.
Right. And so they Mandy doesn't have her elbow, or has her elbows on the table, and they deduct points from her, and then she doesn't say please, and they take more points from her, and they're
just badgering people. Well, and they also have like the kind of like pseudo military music playing in the background. Like it's all it's played off by the show as a these people are making mistakes, but it is certainly a choice.
Yeah, right. So it becomes this whole thing of then like they start excluding people who like don't have as many manner points. Like this guy comes up to him.
It's a caste system.
And they're like, oh, well, you have -5 points, so like we're not actually going to let you sit at our table because that could bring down our points.
Yeah.
And now, we've created
bad manners are contagious, they say.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And so we've created this dumb, weird caste system. It's very season 3, episode 1 of Black Mirror?
Yeah.
Nosedive, the Bryce Dallas Howard episode where everything's pink.
Oh,
and you give everyone 5, like you rate everything, like all your currency is based on a 5-star rating system. Good episode of that show. But yeah,
bad episode of Odyssey.
Yeah. I mean, you disagree, and I'm curious to hear how. But
maybe I'm changing my mind again. No, I don't think so. I still have things I like about it, which we did gloss over one of them.
Oh, please.
Alex and David, when they're talking to the principal, they state that we've come to be regarded as experts at good manners, which really got me to laugh, and I thought it was funny. And it's the about face pivot from not caring about manners at all to being the authority on manners. That I don't think it's particularly nuanced or clever, but I think it's funny.
There's humor to be gleaned there,
and again with the principal just not caring and also being voiced by who?
Walker Edmondson.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Yeah, good performance.
Yeah,
but it doesn't. Yeah, so they've become like tyrants with their. Okay, this is part of my additional struggle with this episode that I'm putting my finger on here. But they are portrayed as their like desire for everyone to use perfect manners has turned them into like tyrants.
Yeah, authoritarian tyrants.
The problem is that what they have become doesn't relate to the manners situation.
No, at all.
It's not portrayed as, wow, these people are seeking good manners so much that they now have bad manners.
Yeah.
It is just portrayed as like, boy, these people like have taken so much power and are now like imposing that on everyone else. And like, right, there's a potential for an interesting take there. But it just doesn't.
It doesn't go that way.
I don't think that the lesson they learn is related to the thing they were called out for.
Okay, yeah, that's somewhat fair. I would say that it's indicative of the lesson that they learn. Like it's like the speech that Whit gives them at the end is kind of just like a generalization that includes manners as just an expression of it, which is loose, flimsy.
Sure. Yeah. There is also I will circle back to a funny moment, which is when that they're showing off their manners to Whit. We find out that like Alex is extending his pinky while drinking the milkshake.
Yeah, which is great. Wonderful. Yeah. And also when they're leaving the principal, he says, "Thank you, sir, many times in many ways to you and yours."
Yes. Yeah.
As somebody who likes the needlessly and ironically cordial sense of humor, I think that's funny.
Sure. Like, yeah, I've been known to use it before as well, or I'm a big... That's not even in like I don't even do it in a tongue-in-cheek way necessarily, but I'm a big fan of sir, as we've talked about before on the podcast.
No, I think that manners are very helpful in a lot of situations. But I think about if I'm like genuinely grateful for something, I'll say, "May you and your offspring have many oxen." I like that as like as my way of saying thank you.
Sure. Lovely.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like
that's quite the blessing.
It is quite the blessing, and I feel like that joke lands 6 out of 10 times, and I'm okay with that ratio.
Right, exactly. That's a very Andrew Acebo. You'd be uncomfortable if it was anything greater.
No, I'd be too comfortable if it was anything greater.
Sure.
Over-dependency on the bit is bad.
I don't know, Andrew. What about this podcast? Is this an example of that?
Okay. So committing to the bit and codepending on the bit are two different things.
Oh, okay.
That's what they teach me in school. Bit relations.
Yeah. Yep. Isn't 2-Bit 2-Bit was a villain in Odyssey at one point, right?
2-Bit was a villain. I think it was a Twilight Zone situation.
I think it was more recent than that, but whatever. And yeah, so then they go to Whit's End, and Whit agrees to hire them to be the manor police for him.
Yes,
and calls them like the MPs, and like makes it like even more like institutional. Like we're going to like draw parallels between this and like general authoritarianism.
Oh yeah, yep. Yeah, just he really fully sent it. The kids were going down a bad path, and Whit said, "Go on,
right?
Speed up,
right? This will teach you a lesson.
The faster you go, the harder you fall." That's what I think as a loving parent. I want my children to fall as hard as possible.
That's a lovely thought, Andrew.
Just face planting.
So then they have a manners off?
Yeah, pretty much. So they sit down and they have to pass a test before they can be so that Whit knows that they're the men for the job. Alex has an ice cream cone and David has an ice cream soda, which I feel like it's very hard to eat an ice cream soda with bad manners. It didn't feel like a fair comparison when I was listening to it.
Sure, I feel like, most things are targeted at Alex here.
Poor guy. And then obviously Whit and Mandy chime in just aggressively
right. You're
prove the point of you're doing it wrong. You're looking at counterclockwise. You ate your whipped cream through a straw instead of using a spoon. All kinds of stuff.
Which, am I wrong in saying like they, despite their like caste system being bad, was there like a lot of calling people out on things that weren't really bad manners? Like, I guess, like, Mandy with the elbow was, like, a bit. But, like, it didn't... It felt like generally...
It was mostly just, like, politeness.
Right, that they were being overzealous, but, like, the things that they were talking about were, like, more grounded in the world of politeness than...
Licking ice cream counterclockwise.
Right, than this, like, ice cream etiquette thing from the part of the book that they didn't read yet.
Yeah.
And, they discover that they're not perfect because they, didn't eat their ice cream in the exact appropriate manner.
Yep. Thanks, Whit. Really great teachable moment. You couldn't have just taken them up to the office and had the conversation that you had with them after the fact.
At this point, it leads them to, like, a fighting match.
Yeah, they get super upset, and I think David spills some of his soda on Alex, and, like, they almost throw food at each other, and Whit's like, all right, come up to my office. Yeah. Which I'm like, wow, great parenting here, Whit. Great job.
Yeah, and then he explains to them that their manners have actually made them rude.
Maybe your friends at school don't know the manners book, like you didn't know the manners book about eating ice cream and all of that, but... Whit does say, my favorite thing, which is the way you judge others is the way you will be judged. And that's probably 90% of the reason I like this episode.
Sure.
So they kind of learn their lesson a bit. So it's, manners is more about being polite and considerate of other people than being correct and a status situation, which, cool.
Good lesson.
Good lesson, yeah.
I think that there's a better episode that could have been constructed around it than what we got.
Oh, I mean, they could have done a whole, like, 3-parter where they go to, like, Victorian England and the Imagination Station and learn about, like, how manners divided people and insulated the wealthy from suffering and stuff.
But it is just, it's that thing where it's like, okay, it's like the point that it eventually gets to is one that I'm on board with.
Generally, don't be a jerk.
Right. And and treat people well and considerately, and don't worry about like the minutia of detail in that, but like the heart behind it.
Exactly.
Which I think applies out to most things, not just manners.
And that would be the reason I like this episode, because from my perspective, the manners book is the Bible, and him correcting other people's manners is Christians holding non-believers to Christian standards.
I mean... love that interpretation of it. I don't know that it's
very generous. And I don't know that
it's necessarily there in the text, but like, I mean, that's a thing I care deeply about.
Yeah. Well, and I just think that it's interesting that of all people, Focus on the Family would put out an episode where it's like, it's really not the letter of the law, it's the spirit of the law.
Yeah, that's fair. They don't seem like they're very spirit of the law people.
No. Okay. Maybe I feel slightly worse about it than when I started, but I do think that there are things about it that I still really liked.
Yeah,
and the manners jokes they get me. And as
Sure.
somebody that...
Sure, there are some jokes that work. I appreciate your read of it, even though it is not
what was intended.
it's not something that I got out of the episode, but like I see how you arrived at that point, and I appreciate that take. Do you have any I don't know, hard lessons you had to learn growing up about manners, or things you still struggle with, or like what's your goofy one?
My relationship with manners is like that of somebody with dementia and time, in the sense that it does exist, but really I don't really have much confidence in the connection there. Just because I was homeschooled, like, so much of my life, as far as like the important things that I needed to do to function, I did in isolation of other people. Whether that was like sitting at a desk doing schoolwork, I did that alone in my basement. So it didn't matter if I tapped on my desk and, drummed the solo from Moby Dick by Led Zeppelin. Like, it didn't cause any problems. It was not a, bothersome behavior. It didn't get in the way of me doing anything. I will say I still don't know how to eat spaghetti without looking like an idiot. I know that I can if I really slow down and do it, but when a plate full of spaghetti is placed in front of me, it would take an act of God for me to have the self-control to really slow down that much to not make a fool out of myself eating spaghetti.
Sure.
Do you have any foods like that?
Yeah, I feel like I'm similarly like not great with spaghetti. It's less about like noises or it looking that bad, and more about like I just do have like it's hard not to fling sauce places.
Yeah, exactly. It really is. The slurping is just...
And fettuccine has the same problem.
Yeah.
But...
Well, at least like with ramen and stuff, it's like socially acceptable to slurp it and like get really over it. Like, I don't feel bad about ramen in that way. But
yeah, I was a big kid who chewed with his mouth open.
Ah, okay.
So that was a long journey to overcome.
I would talk with my mouth full. For sure. That was shocking nobody. There is definitely episodes of, I think, Into the Weeds that have me eating cereal on mic.
Oh, man. Yep. Actually, I feel like you eat cereal in the first episode of the Andrew Sabo podcast.
Do I?
I think so. With the episode with Paige and Balin.
Really?
I could be wrong.
I'll have to go back and check.
I kind of think that's
check
accurate.
the lore. Yeah, no, definitely that. Did your parents ever have like manner programs for you, like reward systems or anything like that?
No, not that I can really. It was way more like getting called out on doing things poorly than it was like positive reinforcement of the good behavior. It was kind of like the good behavior is the standard. You need to step up to it.
Yeah, pretty
We're
much.
not gonna like reward you for something that is baseline expectation.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
But here's my one still to this day that I feel a little bit weird about.
Okay.
Which is I never grew up saying bless you after someone sneezes.
Were you gesundheit or what?
No, just nothing. Like you don't say anything. And so that's one where like I have grown to feel a little bit weird about it as I have aged and seen how universal that is, but it's just not automatic for me. And so if I think of it, I will say it now, but it's not like an impulse I have.
No, it's not an impulse for me either.
And so yeah, it's one that I do feel a little bit weird about, where I'm like, I don't think it's like impolite of me not to say bless you, but like it is this funny thing where I'm like,
everybody has that knee-jerk reaction when somebody sneezes in the room and you're like, oh yeah, people say bless you.
right, or like I'll like sneeze and like get a bless you yelled at me from like the next cubicle over, and I'm like, I would never. But like, thanks. But like
hey,
it
man,
just
I
doesn't
would
feel like
never.
something that like it's not something I would like call attention to, or like, yeah, I don't know. It's just it's a weird one for me. It's one of those like pieces of like manners that I'm like, I just don't quite understand you.
No, yeah.
Because I wasn't raised with this being like a heavily enforced thing. But yeah.
No, I would say for me the biggest thing, like, it was saying thank you. Saying thank you for after dinner, saying thank you for anything. Like, that was...
Oh, yeah.
That's, like, you better say thank you. And I notice, like, it carries into my relationships now where, like, if people don't say thank you, I get upset. Because it's, I don't know. To me, it's such a baseline, you know, just courtesy of other people. It's free, and it shows a small amount of consideration.
Yeah. Yep.
That was the big thing. My parents... One time, it's funny you should say it was more so punishment where, like, we had some people over and my dad made pancakes or something like that for dinner, and
that sounds delightful.
Yeah, it was great.
My father hates breakfast for dinner, so that is not a thing I grew up with.
Well, so it wasn't a regular thing that we would have like a big meal like that.
But that is foreign.
True.
Me.
And an alternative concept.
Like, I love the idea of, like, we had guests over and my dad made pancakes. That would never happen in my household.
Yeah, I don't remember what occasion.
You're not eating anything breakfast related, like, after 11. Like,
the McDonald's mentality. I got you.
Although they went 24 hours, or they went breakfast all day for a while there, which was glorious because I finally had something I could eat at McDonald's.
Yeah, late at night. It's great.
But
yeah, so we had the pancakes or whatever, and apparently my manners and Grace's manners were terrible. So, like, the next day my dad was like, okay, well, when your, siblings were growing up, we did this for them, so, we'll do it for you. You've got a Hershey Kiss in front of you on, you got to eat your dinner with good manners, excuse yourself, wash your plate and everything, then you get this Hershey's chocolate chip, or this Hershey's Kiss.
Nice.
Which is great. And,
yeah.
And, a great system, the token system, a very common, something I use at work a lot, as far as, like, reinforcing and rewarding. We did it, like, 2 nights.
Uh-huh.
Did not last. Grace threw a hissy fit because her Hershey Kiss started to melt, but she didn't want it to be in the freezer because then she couldn't see it and she didn't have the motivation. And so it was just this whole thing where I'm just sitting there eating and trying to earn my Hershey Kiss as it's melting in front of me, and Grace is, like, crying across, and my dad's sitting in the middle like, why did Marie tell me to do this?
Lovely.
And then that didn't carry over. So now I don't know how to eat spaghetti neatly.
What a bummer.
What a bummer.
All right. Any closing thoughts here, Andrew?
Ooh. Say thank you. Plugging saying thank you. Gratitude, underrated these days.
I would also like to point out this episode has an 81% on the wiki with 35 votes. So people tend to agree with you.
I would say I would give it roughly an 80, maybe an 85.
Save it for the eventual ranking episode, guys.
I gotta give him a teaser.
Oh man. Anything you want to plug, Andrew?
Actually, something. This is just for Dylan. I don't really care if the Wildfire Chalk Pod wants to watch it. But Welcome to Wrexham is a great documentary. It just came out on Hulu. It's like a TV show. There's 15 episodes out of it now. They're like half-hour-ish episodes. But Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney bought a soccer team in Wales, and it's at the lowest level. And so it's a really good drama about, them trying to go into this old town and, like, revitalize the economy and the culture and support this football club. And it's really cool. I mean, if you like soccer at all, I think it's a really it shows all of the complexities of playing professional sports really well. And, like, I just think that Ryan and Rob are really funny people that are generally pretty kind humans. So it's cool to see them do a project like that that's, like, uplifting a community and it's sports. So something I like a lot.
Sure. Hey, I can be here behind that. What
about you?
I recently watched a movie called Cha Cha Real Smooth. That is very
I've heard
good.
Great things about that movie.
Yeah, it's
interesting.
It was a Sundance movie that Apple TV Plus picked up, so you can watch it there and nowhere else unless it happens to play at a theater near you. Though I think its theatrical run is done at this point.
Thank you for saving me from looking it up.
But it's it's really really fun movie. Following a dude who's trying to find his place in the world after college.
Okay.
And gets he stumbles into a job as a party starter for bar mitzvahs.
Love that.
And it's fun. It doesn't every time, or I don't know, there were multiple times in the movie where I was kind of like, oh, that's what movie this is gonna be, and then it's not, which I really appreciated.
Yeah. I like it when movies do that.
It really kept it kept itself fairly like free form and like not. It's not a movie that is like single faceted. It's multifaceted.
I love that.
And performances are solid. And it was just like
what's the length?
Had been in. I want to say it is like hour 40 realm.
Love that.
I had been in a bit of a just a funk with movies for a bit, and threw that one on this past week or so, and just sat there with a stupid smile on my face for most of the movie.
Love that.
Like there are some rough moments for sure, but it's just like it's I don't know. It's the definition of like a lovely movie for me.
Which I could stand to watch more lovely movies.
Yeah, not in any way like it's devoid of conflict, but just like, man, like these people are all flawed and I like all of them, and like there's just so much stupid joy I got from watching that. So here I am plugging it. So
love that for you. Getting out of the funk together.
Yeah, I mean,
you, me, the Chalk Squad, just pulling ourselves out of the big chocolate soda we call life.
All right. With all that being said, folks, next week we're going to be back with the last episode of Split Episode Summer.
Wow.
It's actually here.
Oh,
October is ending, and so is Split Episode Summer.
Boy, I'm getting really cold recording in these crop tops the whole time.
So we're going to be talking about episode 446B, The Seven Deadly Dwarves.
Ooh.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Wadfam Chalk Pod is a presentation of the Lidditz Podcast Co-op. This show is a fan podcast and has no official affiliation with Adventures in Odyssey or Focus on the Family. As such, the copyright is ours under Creative Commons. Follow the podcast at wadfamchalkpod on Twitter and Instagram, or email us at wadfamchalkpod@gmail.com. A Matter of Manners was hosted by Dylan Weaver and Andrew Acebo, and edited by Dylan Weaver. And I'm Nathan Haverstick, hoping you'll join us again next time for more of the Wadfam Chalk Pod.